thank you so much for staying tuned to Breakfast Weekend on Impact Africa Television. Now, as we told you earlier, we're going to be kicking off with this segment about traditional medicine, its acceptability, its credibility, in fact, because this is some of the things that people have questioned, and it's one of the reasons that its acceptability is not that deep. But we have a clinical herbalist in the studio with us this morning, in the person of Mrs. Christiana Olapadiuju. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
So, is there a difference between traditional medicine and herbal medicine? I think that's what it's called.
Yes.
Is there a line between both, or are they different?
Pretty much, herbal medicine is a component of traditional medicine.
Okay.
So when we are defining traditional medicine, it encompasses all forms of medical interventions practiced traditionally, while herbal medicine is one of those interventions,
So
using herbs.
would you say that traditional medicine is indigenous in the sense that the traditional medicine, say, practiced in Ibadan, could be different from traditional medicine practiced in Enugu, say in Japan or something like that? Is that how it works?
Absolutely. Even from the definition of traditional itself, tradition is, the practice of a people in a location, a civilization. So usually the practice of a people is unique to them, and that also evolves into, it affects their medical practices as well. So it even boils down to herbal medicine, which seems to be much more scientific and universal, and that's why it seems more acceptable universally. You see, everybody talks more about herbal medicine, but there are other forms of, cultural medicines which are not, they can't, because they cannot be standardized or centralized, they are sort of left, not as developed as herbal medicine. So yes, for instance, the agboiba, malaria, anti-malaria tonic that would be prepared in southwest Nigeria would definitely be different from what you have in northeast Nigeria. Why? Simply because of the, vegetative comparison of the two, differences between the two. The trees you find in the north are different from what you find in the south. So the people of the north would have developed their own anti-malaria tonic based on their own flora.
And do you have areas of specialization, like we have surgeons, dentists, and the likes? Do you have such in traditional medicine?
Absolutely. In traditional medicine, I think the most popular area of specialization that people might be familiar with are the traditional birth attendants. You would hear of, our baby. So that is a specialization. You have some people that only specialize in taking care of the mentally impaired. You have some people that only specialize in maybe infectious diseases, like you would hear things like atosi, kokoronoeje, and all of those things. Although now efforts are being made to make this thing make the practice much more standard, so that if you are known for this in your community, that if you take maybe broken bone, you have bone setters as well, maybe you take broken bone to that family, that is what they do there. You would have heard about, the specialization can be sensed in names, like you hear some families being called Olola family, because they specialize in making incisions. So over time, unfortunately, westernization has eroded many of these practices, but these days now research is beginning to focus on these traditional medical heritages, and hopefully we will document many of them.
When you mentioned bone setting, something came to my mind. There was some 10 years ago, my auntie had an accident, so she shattered her leg. So they went to a traditional healer known for setting bones, and according to the story that we heard, he spoke to those bones and they set themselves, then he packed it. Do traditional healers truly use the supernatural to add it to the leaves and everything?
Well, supernatural, that is an area that is difficult to research, to study, because there is really no tangible empirical detail to hold on to, nothing measurable. The only thing you can see is the result. Yes, some people use incantations, that area of spiritual medicine is also a form of traditional medicine because you have people they call witch doctors and they get results. But like I said earlier, because the practice is not empirical, it's difficult to research such. If the man has spoken to the bones and there was result, it means it worked. It could have been electromagnetic, it could have been, any form of energy that he applied. But personally, as a scientist, I don't like to use the word supernatural because it just means I'm trying to avoid research. I would rather study the man's method and see if it is the words he spoke, which of course we know that words have, they have energy too. Maybe it's the words he spoke that had the impact, or the leaves he used to wrap the bones, because we are aware in the practice of traditional method of intellectual, protection of intellectual property. People do some of these things to shroud their practice in mystery, so that their intellect is not taken for granted.
The credibility, the hygiene, the appropriateness of some of these practices are sometimes called to question. And some people say this is the reason why, Nigerians or Africans generally, what you don't know or what you don't trust, you sort of run away from. Do you think that over time, we may begin to see a situation where traditional medicine, clinical herbal medicine would be more accepted in a way that, of course, people will begin to know more about it, or this mystery that sort of surrounds it is part of the whole thing and over time may impede its acceptability?
I would first of all want to say it's not a question of may. People will begin to see. In fact, people have started to see. There are various alternative clinics around now. Even within Ibadan, I can already count a few that are already practicing herbal medicine in a more modern manner, in a more 21st century conforming way. Yes, in the past you used to see a lot of fields around because there was, that aspect of traditional practices, maybe offering of rituals and all of that in the same space that that medical help is being given to clients and all of that. But these days, this is part of what we call evolution. The practice is beginning to evolve from the typical traditional setting that people see. For instance, I'm a clinical herbalist. I have my training in clinical techniques. I'm also a herbalist. So I've been able to integrate the two practices sufficiently for any client who comes to me, for instance, you will be confident that you are in a place where you are able to receive safe and hygienic intervention. Yes, and those people that we regard as maybe unhygienic and unsafe, or they are shrouded in some mystery and all of that, I think it is more because we don't move close to them. I interact with these people. I know a lot of them. I enter into their spaces of practice. Yes, we can't rule out the fact that they need improvement.
Exactly.
Maybe on the infrastructure. A lot of them are making a great deal of efforts without training now, without government intervention. They're also seeing where the world is tending to, and they are trying to comply with the movement of, how everything is moving. And then you get to their spaces, you see that all of those things we used to see in the past, like maybe shrines and altars where they offered goat heads, goat bloods and all of that, you see that all of those things have been removed. Fine, you may still see their earthen pots. You may still have to sit on the mats to consult with them. If that's their own practice, you can't take it away, because it might be that in their practice you have to sit on the floor, cross your legs for consultation. One thing I always tell people is what we need to do with traditional practices, be it medical practices, be it dressing, be it our cosmetics or whatever, is we don't throw away the ingredients of traditional composition. We improve on it. And that is exactly what traditional medicine also requires. if what this a certain Baba has been doing is serving his clients with some fermented mixture from an earthen pot, we just need to make sure that microbial studies may need to tell us if the microbes, because you can't run away from that. We have things we call probiotics, which are sort of cultivated by fermenting mixtures. We just use laboratory procedures to find out if microbes there are not harmful to human health. Even the foods that we cook in our house, they have microbes. There is microbes in the hair that we breathe in. There are microbes on our skin. So I think that what we need to do is not condemn the practice, but open up our minds to see how we can improve on it.
I understand that in conventional medicine there are quacks, there are people who say they are what they are not. And I believe, from what you've said, I don't know, I'm not sure if we have such among the traditional medicine experts as well. Now, if there are there methods or approaches being put in place to ensure that those bad eggs don't spoil the whole plate?
And apart from that, how can a person that wants to get some sort of medicine from the traditional healers, can they watch out for some things that, okay, this person, this thing makes this look standard, I can trust this person?
Okay, regarding quack, in every profession, you cannot rule out quackery. And for everything that is superior, you will definitely have the inferior. You would have inferior because that thing works. So obviously the evil-minded person will look at how he can trick people out of, their hard-earned money. So yes, there is quackery in this practice, as it is in every practice. And what we are trying to do, and what the practice has even instituted, is to make sure that every practitioner belongs to an association. So you would have all sorts of, pockets of association, Momo association, amalgamation, and all of that. So what people need to know is to be able to identify a practitioner with an association. The efforts that we are now, should I say elitist efforts, that we are now trying to make is to make sure that these associations are registered with the State Ministry of Health, so that to a large extent, if you are a member of that association, the responsibility now lies with the executives of that association to stand shorty for their members and say, oh, we know this person. Because even WHO provides that if you have practiced in an area for more than 10 years and you're well known in that area, especially maybe by the Bale, the traditional heads of that area, that qualifies you to be called a practitioner. Because education is not only cannot be limited to the four walls of an institution, considering the fact that not everybody has the requirements to get higher education and all of that. So the requirement for practitioners to be recognized as a practitioner, because if you've been somewhere for 10 years, really you can't run away. People know you, they probably know your family and all of that. So that is one thing that people need to understand. Before you patronize a practitioner, you want to find out about that person. How well known is that person? You understand? We have organizations that have been in practice for decades. You understand? Close to 40, 50 years. Such organizations, based on how long they have been present in the space, can be trusted. But if you go and patronize someone that is just walking along the road, and then you say you saw some colored mixture on her head or on his head, and you patronize it, then absolutely you're on your own.
Let's talk about the orientation. Earlier you talked about the fact that even traditional medical experts are looking towards evolving. They are trying to tend towards where medicine should be in this day and age. But I know that it's one thing to want to be somewhere or to want to be something. It's another thing to actually be there. I was with a crew that visited Angola sometime last month or 2 months ago, and he was justifying incisions, genital mutilation and all that. And he showed us a particular earthenware where he gets the water that he uses to clean his tools, and how he uses Izal, a disinfectant, to ensure that germs don't. And he sounded so convinced that he was doing the right thing. I felt, okay, for him to try to convince us, it means he feels, yes, some measures should be put in place to ensure that whatever he's doing is clean and is, germ-free and all that. But is he doing it the right way? That's the huge question. So is there anyone in charge of, say, how orientation and reorientation of not just let's be clean, let's be this, let's ensure that everywhere is a particular way, but is there someone actually telling people or guiding people on how to do this?
Okay, first and foremost, like 2 days ago, not like 2 days ago, we had a workshop at the Institute of African Studies in UI, and the bane of this workshop is to start developing a structure to regulate this practice. So all of these things are going to be looked into, because the problem that the government, civil society organizations, and even individuals and consumers have always had with this practice is the lack of regulation in the practice. So now such interventions are being put in place by the academia in partnership with the Ministry of Health to make sure that, okay, we know we have a problem. The problem is there is no standard in this practice. Like the cleanliness you mentioned, or the method of sterilizing your tools. The thing is, in life, I always tell myself, you can't be absolutely right or wrong. And in practice, that is the truth. For all I care, this man may have been doing this for over
years,
for decades, and it has been working. The only issue I would have with him, as someone coming from a background of science, is where is his data? For instance, I want to know how many people he has incised, how many of them have been infected or not, how many of them have survived the incision. If his data shows that all his clients have survived, I do not have a right to say that his practice is wrong, because data doesn't lie. But the problem is, does he even have this data? So these are some of the things we need to start educating. These are some of the standards we need to start setting, because your own form of sterility may be different from traditional sterility. You understand? Okay, there are some families that I'm aware of now. When they give birth to their babies, there is a century-old pot in some corner of great-grandma's house that the baby must drink water from. And when I tried, because I always try to demystify phenomena, I try to look at it from the angle of science. Okay, this pot has been here. It means microbes must have taken over the water or whatever is in that pot. Now, when they give a baby, is that not some form of vaccination? And then they say that this same water, when they had a certain problem in that village, the water was sprinkled on people, and they had, to protect their own household. And the people came down with all sorts of infection. So does that tell us something? And yet, every child in that household did not have that infection. It means they have been immune. So it's a form of immunization. Introducing, or may I use the word, inoculating that bacteria into those babies, so that going forward, even when they are exposed to infection, they won't break down with infection. That's a traditional method.
You talked about a particular meeting that you had with some people. IATV was also there, and we'll take the clip of that video now by Ayade Libide.
Prior to the introduction of cosmopolitan medicine, traditional medicine used to be the dominant medical system available to millions of people in Africa in both rural and urban communities. However, the arrival of the Europeans marked a significant turning point in the history of this age-long tradition and culture. According to Dr. Bafemi Jegede, to harmonize hands and heads of traditional medical practitioners and intensify effort to seek more government recognition is the essence of the workshop organized by the Institute of African Studies, University of Ibadan.
Look at ourselves. We want to be able to assess our situations, our problems. We want to know why. We will now do a kind of retrospection. We will look inward. We will internalize the problem. And in doing this, we will be able to also internalize the solution. Then we will now tell the government that we are ready to make amends, we are ready to change our operational patterns in a way that it will be acceptable to the contemporary society.
Following the growing demand for traditional medicine and the contributions of the medicine to the overall health delivery system, particularly in Africa, stakeholders have suggested that traditional medical system be integrated into the mainstream of healthcare services to improve accessibility to healthcare.
Herbal medicine should be introduced into it, because we can even treat many diseases more easily than orthodox does.
Mrs. Christiana Olapade Ojo is of the belief that the traditional medicine sector has enough potentials to boost the nation's economy if properly harnessed.
Potentials embedded in traditional medicine is enormous. It is enormous. You know, we have tried to apply some economic dynamics to some ingredients or compositions of traditional medicine. We have, you know, plants that are able to take care of things like malaria, the plasmodium itself. We have plants that can clear it from the bloodstream. Our traditional practitioners, they have these things.
According to Dr. Ibrahim Lawal and Dr. Ismail Jimo, there are problems limiting the development of traditional medicine, such as lack of standardization, efficacy and quality control of plants used, extinction of some plant species, and lack of funds, among others. This problem must, however, be addressed for the development of the practice.
I think the major issue that we're just trying to unravel and try to profile solution to now in traditional medicine in Nigeria presently is the issue of standardization and the hygiene. If we can able to handle the issue of standardization to make sure that whatever we prescribe, it is prescribed in a standardized dosage, then I think this one will not be an issue again.
Our people, the way they practice it is not encouraging. That is why many people were being scared away, especially the elites. But if they can transform the way and manner they prepare, the ingredients they may use, if they can take charge of hygienic aspect of preparing those products, definitely people will even agree to imbibe all those things.
We need to work on how to modernize our way of practicing, then how to prepare our herbal preparation in a modern form, in a way that will be acceptable to all and sundry. I'm talking of packaging presentation. First thing to be attractive to anybody that wants to patronize or to use your drugs.
A teamwork among stakeholders is, however, a must for the fruitful outcome of medicinal plant research and its uses. Ayuade Legbede, IATV News.
Interesting one. It's important for us to also talk about administration and dosage. I think that's one thing many people, when you look at the elites, when they say, oh no, you use, oh no, I can't do this. It's majorly first off the person who prepares whatever it is you're administering. The first thing they say is, are you sure the person is measuring the ingredients? For example, you want to use the bark of a tree. Did the person weigh it? Which is what the conventional medicine would never play with. You know, and then they say by the time you want to administer it, use a claw, or what do they call it, one or something. My own hand is different from somebody else's hand, and so the disparity in all these measurements can make or mar the health of the person it's being administered to. How would you react to this?
The thing about herbal medicine that we need to understand first and foremost, traditionally a lot of people have said that herbal medicine has no dosage, but I'm telling you today herbal medicine does have dosage. Because when a baba or a mama baby prepares an agbo for you, they might tell you use the cup of your hand or use the cup of the child's hand. That is measurement. Because they are telling you, if it is a preparation for the child, they will tell you use the cup of that child's hand. Your own hand would give that child more of that mixture. So that is measurement. In some places, they will tell you to use snail shell. And they will tell you the size of the snail shell. For people who are in traditional practice, when they call something Igbin Akpinu, I know what an Igbin Akpinu is. So if I see an Igbin that is not Akpinu, I will know. I'll say, okay, no, I want an Igbin Akpinu. And I'll check it. I'll see that it is an Igbin Akpinu. So they tell you, use an Igbin Akpinu shell to measure your the mixture. And you go and use a Bebere Igni, which is a small one. You know, these are differences that people do not understand, and that is why they will say, oh, there is no dosage. But gladly, like we mentioned earlier, the evolution has now gotten to the point where we can even measure in mils, you know, in CL and all of that. So the issue of dosage is being gradually put to rest. Now, the issue of it being standardized and all of that, there is this misconception about herbal medicine that people need to get right. Herbal medicine is different from pharmaceutical drugs. Pharmaceutical drugs are designed in principle as poisons for infectious medicines, or to halter body problems or body anomalies in the cases of physiological disorders. So for someone who has a headache, you probably use a non-steroidal like acetaminophen to block off the pain. That has been designed. If you use excess of paracetamol, it's going to affect your body. But herbal medicines are not pharmaceutical drugs. People need to stop defining herbal medicines as pharmaceutical drugs, because in principle, herbal medicines are food. They are not drugs.
So
they are both medicines.
What do you mean by food? Like you should consume it daily or something?
Absolutely. Your medicine, your food should be your medicine. You must have heard that saying. I can't remember whose quote it is now. Your food should be your medicine, so that medicines will not become your food. And in Yoruba philosophy, there's a common saying that says, Omode omo ogun, therefore, efo being food. So you can easily say otherwise that Omode omo ogun, okpe lonje. So our food is actually our medicine. And if you look at the composition of herbal medicine, they are taken from our regular plants. If I'm going to prepare a mixture for diarrhea, for instance, I'll just tell you to boil your rice, decant the water, and take a cup of it, and it will stop diarrhea. We have experimented it clinically, we have documented the effect. It will stop diarrhea. That is the same rice that you use to prepare your jollof rice, your Chinese rice. It's the same rice.
Which means if you take too much of any herbal mixture, you can't have
you will have issues, because too much of anything is bad. There is water toxicity. That is ordinary water, the simplest food. If you take too much of it, you are going to be in trouble. If you take too much of pepper, you are going to be in trouble. If you take too much of citrus, oranges and its family, you are going to be in trouble. It's going to start with your enamel. It's going to give you bruises in your buccal cavity. So too much of everything is bad. But we need to stop. The moment we can condition our minds to stop defining herbal medicine in the concept or within the space of chemical drugs, it will now be easier for us to sit down and help people understand why herbal medicines are not harmful or why they could be harmful, because there are some plants that are highly toxic but they are equally medicinal. It depends on the dosage. Like Paracelsus said, the difference between medicine and poison is in the quantity. There are some plants that if you had more than a single leaf to a 50-liter pot of preparation, it's going to purge the person. The person will keep going to toilet like for the next 48 hours. But it doesn't mean that that plant is not effective, is not medicinal. So if you are going to add pepper to your vegetable soup, for instance, are you going to add a Congo of Rodo? No. Because over time, you are aware that a certain quantity is all you need. That is why you need to work with practitioners who have the right information. This practice is not something that people stumble into. You don't stumble into making your pot of soup, for instance. Your mother didn't stumble into it, your dad didn't. You learnt it, it was passed down from generation to generation. Usually, information about traditional medicine is handed down like that, from ancestors, to their descendants, most of the time. If you're going to learn the trade, it is still being passed down. It is different from chemical drugs, where you can sit down and say that, okay, this leaf is an active laxative, and then you take it to the laboratory, you extract it, you isolate it, you identify the active ingredients in it, and then you begin to synthesize it. That is different. The isolation process, the extraction process, the synthesization process is the same reason why there is a lot of problems now with pharmaceutical drugs, and we are beginning to, in fact, mankind has been experiencing a lot of side effects, and that's why humanity is beginning to turn back towards nature, because they have seen that nature is safer.
Can you use traditional medicine alongside pharmaceutical drugs?
Yes, typically traditional medicine has always been used alongside pharmaceutical drugs. You would get that from when they will tell you must eat before you use your medicine. The food you are eating is traditional medicine.
Okay, let's say you have malaria, for instance.
Yes.
some people will say if you're using tablets that you've been given from the hospital,
I
you can't
understand
take
the question.
herbal concussion alongside.
I understand the question. Now, there are some conditions, especially something like diabetes, because some plants are very highly hypoglycemic, something like Garcinia cola, the Orobo bitter cola. If you use a certain quantity of bitter cola, you might find out that your sugar level will drop. So, for instance, if that person is diabetic and you're on Downhill and glucophage, and then you are consuming bitter cola ignorantly, you might have a significant and dangerous drop in your sugar level. So that's why they would say, be careful, do not combine, your tablets with herbal medicines. But some conditions are not like that. For instance, malaria, most anti-malaria tonic that I know are quite safe. They don't have psychoactive effects, they don't have hypoglycemic effects, they don't have effect on the heart rate and all of that. So if you use them alongside anti-malaria tablets, they wouldn't usually have any serious side effects.
All right, as we need to wrap up quickly now. I know that a lot of packaged herbal medicine are beginning to have NAFDAC numbers, and it's a great one, to find that the government and even the herbal mixture producers are working together now.
Yeah.
How well or how not well would you say that the government have been contributing to the growth of traditional medicine?
At this point, I must use this opportunity to appreciate the federal government for their efforts and intervention in the development and stabilization of the practice of alternative medicine. Recently, the Department of Traditional and Complementary Alternative Medicine has been established at the Federal Ministry of Health, and they are looking at stepping it down to all the 36 states, which would regulate the practice in every state. So that is a major plus, on the part of the government. Also, in August, during the Traditional Medicine Day celebration, there was the what's it called now, traditional medicine being incorporated into the curriculum of higher institutions, and that bill has been passed, it has been approved. So all we are waiting on now are higher institutions to start turning out their curricula to let us know where people can fit in, and let people know, because the challenge that a lot of practitioners have is there is now a knowledge gap between the lettered practitioners, the elite practitioners, and the unlettered practitioners. So it was part of the issues that was discussed at the workshop that we had on Thursday, that how can we ensure that very important group of so-called unlettered but equally knowledgeable group of practitioners are carried along in this journey of evolution of traditional medicine, because a lot of them do not have the minimum requirements of O-level, for instance, first degree, but they have the requirement of experience in the practice. So if that experience can pass for something, I think universities may also want to consider experienced practitioners in these trainings.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. We have been discussing traditional medicine in contemporary times, and we have been talking with Madam Christiana Olapadiojo, who is a clinical herbalist. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
We'll take a break, and very shortly, our next guest will be here. Stay with us.